Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining this session for CEAS International Students on CPT, OPT, and Co-op. My name is Kelly Plazabat. I'm a program manager in the UC International Services Office, and we have James Tenney from UC International here, as well as Christy Stewart from the College of Cooperative Education and Professional Studies. So I'm going to kick it over to James first to get us started.
All right, well, welcome everyone. I'm glad you made it. I'm going to share my screen here and get some slides. This presentation is broken into two parts. There'll be a part for me to talk about some of the immigration stuff that you need to be aware of. And then Ms. Stewart is going to cover at the part two of this presentation with some important information about your particular department. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, my name is James Tenney. I'm with UC International Services, and we're going to talk a little bit about CPT, OPT, and also some career services. And Christy's going to cover some stuff about your department and some academic requirements for the co-op that you are all involved in here. This is mainly geared and designed towards an audience of undergraduate students who are in CEAS. And so if you're not in that program, or if you're an undergrad, if you're a graduate or something, bear with me. I'll throw out a few examples for you, but this is what the program is mainly designed for. That's me. If you haven't seen my face before, that's me again. And this is where our office is located. We're in Edward Center 1 on the 7th floor. So we're located in Edward Center 1 on the corner of Jefferson and Corey. Our email address is international.services@uc.edu, and our phone number is 513-556-4278. We're open Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Yes, we are actually closed on the weekends. Some people think we're open on the weekends, but we're closed. So if you want to call us during those hours, or if you send us an email, we'll get back to you as soon as we can. We're usually pretty quick with the email, and so if you email us during the business week, we're going to respond the same day. There's no need to send us an email and then call us with your questions. Or if you feel like you want to walk in and speak to someone, feel free to do that. These are some of our advisors that you may meet with when they're discussing your options for curricular practical training, optional practical training, or in fact, any kind of immigration related questions that you may have. Quick plug and reminder for our weekly newsletter that goes out every Tuesday, Wednesday. There are some fun events that are discussed in there and some fun stuff, but also some resources that will be important for you for the success of your career while here at UC. And again, if there's any kind of immigration update, we're going to be posting it in there, as well as sending you individual emails to your UC email account. So if you're not checking your UC email account, start checking it, because that's where all official university business advisories and resources are going to be sent to. We're also available on social media, and so if there's an update in government regulations or travel warnings or something along those lines, we're going to be posting it on these particular handles here. First up, a quick plug for one of our partners here on campus. If you're still looking for jobs or interested in getting your career started, we do have the Bearcat Promise Career Studio. This is a wonderful facility that's open to all students. And this is where you can get help with not only resume building, interview techniques, one-on-one career advising to figure out what is your major and where do you want to be in 10, 15 years. And so they'll discuss with you things like higher education, like a master's degree, or where to go find jobs, or co-op experiences to help build up your career here at UC. And so there's a QR code there for finding out more information about the Bearcats Promise Studio. Sign up for an appointment to go meet with them, get your career started in the right way. One of the most important tools they have there is something called InterStride, which is a database of employers here in the US that are hiring international students. And so you can do a search by region, by major, you can even do a search by company. These are companies that are hiring international students right now for things like co-ops or long-term careers. You'll even list some of the employers in there that are currently sponsoring H-1B employment. And so if you are interested in getting co-op positions here in the US or looking at long-term plans in the US, they have access and can give you access to this important database. Our office populates this database on a regular basis with up-to-date information about employers here in the area, as well as nationwide employers, some large companies as well as small ones. Okay, so my main point today of my presentation is to offer you some information about work authorizations or how to complete your co-ops and your long-term career goals here after graduation. As an F1 student, there is something called practical training. And practical training is essentially the legal authorization for you to go get employment or experiences to help fulfill academic credit or to fulfill some optional experiences that will be helpful for your particular degree or your work path. And it allows you to get paid or unpaid experiences or employment while here in the US. There are two forms of practical training. One is called optional practical training, or OPT, and the other one is called curricular practical training, or CPT. Generally speaking, you must have completed at least one academic year of full-time in-person classes in the US to qualify for either one of these. If you are a graduate student listening in on the call, there is an exception to this. If you are in a graduate program and everyone in your program is required to begin employment opportunities within the first year, but that's typically reserved for DAP and certain other business programs. So first up, curricular practical training, or CPT. This is designed to give you an opportunity to carry out training, employment, or some kind of practical experience that is part of your established curriculum. This training or employment must be necessary in order to complete the degree. It's not just a great opportunity or a good optional experience. It has to fulfill an academic requirement or a necessity. Each of you today, if you're here from CEAS undergraduate, you're in a co-op program. CPT is going to be your primary work authorization to either carry out co-op opportunities, or if you are going to do EEPs here in the US, you're going to be using CPT in order to qualify for the authorization you need. CPT is more than just a work permit. It's also a immigration administrative process that shows why on your transcript you are engaging in something that's less than 12 credit hours per semester. So for example, when you sign up for co-op, you may be registered for a 0, 1, 2, or 3 credit course of some kind only for that semester. And so maybe you're doing an EEP, or you're doing a paid co-op or an unpaid co-op. Either way, CPT is necessary to explain this particular semester on your transcript of where were you and what were you doing, and this gives you permission to be registered for that particular co-op credit, whether you're in the US or outside the US. And we'll explain the outside part in just a few moments. So such trainings such as EEPs, co-ops, externships, internships, things like that will have to be covered by CPT. In order to qualify for CPT, again, you have to be in the US full-time in-person study for at least one academic year, unless you're in one of those graduate programs. And then to submit the CPT request, you're going to start off with iBearcats Global. So as soon as you have a job offer, which hopefully you may have obtained through Bearcats Promise, the studio, you're going to go to iBearcats Global and you're going to submit some information in that program regarding the terms of your employment or your experience. Again, maybe it's an EEP or employment. You're going to explain what dates you need the CPT approval to take place, where it's going to take place, and you're also going to indicate something called the academic advisor. This is because the CPT form is used for a wide variety of programs here. A lot of programs here on campus use academic advisors to approve internships, externships. As co-op students, you're going to use your co-op advisor anytime you see academic advisor mentioned on the CPTE form. Because when you click on the CPTE form and you submit your details and click submit, your co-op advisor is going to get an email asking them to review your information and approve it to verify that this truly is meeting some form of co-op credit, and they are aware of it. So make sure you're still in touch with your co-op advisor. Make sure you're attending those classes, you're making those appointments and those interviews with them to make sure you're all on the same page before you begin the CPT e-form process in iBearcats Global. CPT is issued to meet the co-op requirements per semester. The start and the end dates of the CPT must take place within the semester dates. Now, what we mean by this is, let's say the semester starts, I think, May 11th for the summer, for example. And so typically, Your start date for the CPT is going to begin May 11th and probably end sometime before August 9th. August 9th being the end, or August 8th, I think it is, at the end of the summer semester. Now, we do allow 1 week of flexibility. So for example, if you wanted to start a week earlier before the summer semester begins, we can do that. If your co-op experience is going to end 1 week after the summer semester ends, we can also do that. But it must take place at least within those parameters. We won't be approving, endless co-ops or CPT authorizations after August 8th. However, if you are going to be doing a double co-op and you want to continue with that employer, then you'll need to work with us and your co-op advisor to make sure that your dates are matching up appropriately so we can get you one period of CPT issued for the summer and then another period of CPT issued for the fall semester. But nothing will be taking place, for example, over the winter break or any substantial gap between the semesters. CPT requests can take 5 business days to process after he has been certified by your co-op advisor. So let's say on a Monday you submit your CPT request and your co-op advisor on a Wednesday says, yep, I approve this. That means we don't have access to your information, your e-form, until your co-op advisor does this, which is probably going to be a Wednesday. And so that means it may take us 5 business days. And remember, we're closed Saturdays and Sundays. And so it won't be until next Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday of the following week before we get to your request and get this approved. I highlight this because it can be you could be very eager in the job hunting process where maybe you get a job offer on a Monday and you tell them, I'll start next Monday. Well, that's just not going to happen. And so keep in mind that we do need some time here. It's also perfectly okay from a U.S. employer perspective to let them know, hey, I can't start next Monday. I need a couple of weeks to get things ready. Even American students and American employees are asking for 2 or 3 weeks to get things sorted out before they begin a job. So it's perfectly normal to go through that process. And just remember that you're going to need this process in order to get these steps completed to get your work authorization. You certainly cannot begin work until you have the CPT issued on your I-20, which is what we're going to send to you when we approve your CPT e-form. Once your application is approved, you're going to get that I-20 and then you can show it to your employer. And then they're going to help you with the onboarding process to get you into the payroll system if you're getting paid, or the employee database of their employment if you're volunteering for them, so you can begin the employment or the experience with them. Now, you are not limited in the amount of CPT you may utilize, but you are going to be falling under academic requirements. And so, for example, co-op requires 5 semesters of co-op. That means we could technically issue 5 semesters of CPT for you to complete those co-op requirements. However, if you do engage in 1 year or 365 days of full-time CPT, you are ineligible for optional practical training for when you graduate. We'll talk about OPT here a little bit later on, but OPT can be used before or after graduation. Most of you are going to want to save OPT for after graduation so you can get a year's worth of experience with an employer at the very least. If you do use 12 months of full-time CPT, then you are no longer eligible for any OPT for when you graduate. You may use 11 months and 29 days of full-time CPT, and you will still be eligible for 12 months of OPT for when you graduate. But once you cross over into that 365th day, then your OPT is gone. So do keep that in mind because you have to very, very carefully plan how you're going to use your CPT if you are in a co-op program at CEAS at the undergraduate level. And why I highlight that is that co-op typically requires an experience of 350 hours employment or 300 hours of EEP to be completed within the semester, the start and end date, over a period no shorter than 13 weeks, fall and spring, or 11 weeks during the summer. And so this is what you need to keep in mind. For most of you, your CPT is going to go from the start of the semester to the end of the semester. There may be some slight variation of that. Maybe you'll start a week earlier or end a week later. Maybe you just need the bare minimum of 13 weeks to complete your hours, but the hours must be completed over a 13-week period at least, and perhaps 16 weeks. or at the very least 11 weeks in the summer, but no more than the 15, 16 weeks that it typically is over the summer. And so what this means is that ultimately you're going to be using 5 semesters of CPT and you're not going to be eligible for OPT for when you graduate. And so that's something you need to be conscious of. And we'll talk more about planning here in just a few moments. After your CPT has been approved for a particular semester, maybe you did get 13 weeks of CPT or 16 weeks of CPT for the spring semester, let's say. Maybe something happens and you need to shorten it for some reason. For example, we can shorten CPT after it has been approved if for some reason you experience something official like a layoff, termination, accident, illness, or through no fault of your own. We cannot shorten CPT on the basis of you're hoping to save a few days so your OPT can be salvaged. That's not what we can do legally with that. But those are the legal reasons why we can shorten the CPT if something comes up after we have approved your CPT for a particular semester. So keep that in mind. So let's say you are in CEAS undergraduate and you're facing 5 co-op semesters. How do you save your post-completion OPT for when you graduate? Well, there's a couple of ways you can do this. For example, co-ops that are done outside the US do not require CPT authorization. And so therefore they don't count against that important deadline that eliminates your OPT. We still need the CPT e-form to be submitted, and you're going to check off the box in the e-form that says this is for overseas co-ops. And because we do need the CPT e-form on file so we can keep your immigration status open during that semester, but we won't issue CPT. But keep in mind that if you do decide to do a co-op outside the US, which is a great idea, you must also be outside the US for the entire semester, not just when the co-op begins and ends. Also, the employer must be located outside the US. What that means is, let's say you get an internship with P&G here in the US, but you decide to go home to Bangladesh to do your CPT. Well, unfortunately, if P&G is based here in the US, we're still issuing CPT for that semester. But let's say you get hired by P&G that's based in Bangladesh and not the US company here in the US. Then, if you're in Bangladesh working for the Bangladesh branch of P&G, then you wouldn't have to have CPT issued, but we would have to make sure that the CPT e-form is submitted so we have a record of where you're at in the world doing your co-op. Also, you need to remember that if you're going to do it overseas, be outside the US before the semester starts and do not return until after the semester has ended. If you arrive back or if you're still in the US at some point during that semester, we have to approve CPT for the entire semester. So this is a good option, but you need to plan ahead very carefully. Use the international co-op, use your co-op advisors very carefully. Make sure you get all your requirements and your processes in order. Make sure all the documentation is set and make sure you book those flights very carefully so you are outside the US for the appropriate length of time. Another way to save your OPT for after graduation is perhaps to use some of it before graduation. So for example, let's say you use 3 months of pre-completion OPT for a particular semester. This means that you only have 9 months of OPT for after graduation. Some students do that. And if you would like to use some pre-completion OPT in order to do that, to save a particular semester from using your CPT, you would need to make sure that you have to come and see us 3 months, 90 days before you plan on starting the OPT for your particular co-op semester, and you must be prepared to pay for premium processing. We'll talk about premium processing in a little bit. And the reason why we're having these requirements here is we're having a very messy time right now with this particular US government who is being very slow in processing OPT applications. And so if you are planning to use OPT for a particular co-op semester, you need to be prepared to come see us about 3 months before you are going to start your employment and you need to be prepared to pay for premium processing to guarantee it gets here in time for your particular semester. So planning your co-ops and CPT use is, of course, very, very important. One route that you may want to consider if you're still early in your academic career here at UC is to perhaps do 2 overseas co-ops early in your degree and then carry out the final 3 co-ops within the US with an employer that potentially may hire you long-term after graduation. So for example, if you use a couple of your co-ops outside the US, that means that you are not using CPT for 2 of those particular co-ops. That brings you back down to using CPT for 3 semesters, which would barely, just about, almost, but not quite, cover 365 days of full-time employment, and therefore you would still be eligible for 12 months of OPT after graduation. Or another alternative is perhaps you just go ahead and use all 5 co-ops within the US and use CPT for all 5 co-ops because you're at the undergraduate level and you've met with your advisors in the Bearcat Promise Studio and they agree that your particular field would probably benefit if you went on to do a master's almost immediately. So maybe you do 5 semesters of undergraduate co-op, CPT, and you go straight into a master's degree after you graduate with your bachelor's where during that master's program you are eligible for additional CPT at a much lower rate for academic purposes, and you would be allocated 12 months of OPT based upon that particular master's degree. And so some of you who are in the Ascend program, for example, you're doing both degrees at the same time. You may be using 5 CPTs for your undergraduate part of your degree, and then you're getting ready to graduate in May with an undergraduate degree and a master's degree in engineering. We would then switch your degree on your I-20 from undergraduate to a master's and help you apply for OPT based upon the master's degree. Those of you not in the Ascend program, maybe you're just doing a 4 or 5 year undergraduate degree in engineering. You've used all 5 semesters of co-op using CPT. It's getting really close to May and you want to apply for OPT, but realize you don't have OPT eligibility. One of the things you may want to explore at that point is going straight into a master's degree. And then after a couple of years, when you graduate, you can then apply for 12 months of OPT based upon that master's degree. Maybe the job market's not looking good right now. Maybe you're being advised that your particular form of engineering would benefit with you getting a master's degree. So think about these things very carefully. You just don't have to automatically go into OPT after finishing each degree level. Okay, we're now going to switch the conversation to OPT here. Optional practical training is a work permit that gives you optional experiences. They're not required for a degree program, but perhaps you want to do them to meet a degree requirement like co-ops. But most importantly, most students tend to save all 12 months for when they graduate. And you do get 12 months of OPT per higher degree level. So let's say you were very careful with your CPT and your overseas co-ops and you graduate with a bachelor's and you get 12 months of OPT. Great. Then you go back to school and get a master's degree. Once you complete the master's degree, you get 12 months of OPT. You can't combine the 12 months. So if you're graduating with an undergraduate degree, don't use your OPT, but go straight into a master's. You only get 12 months of OPT based upon the master's. You can't use OPT that you didn't use in the past. However, all of you are in CEAS, which means this is a STEM field. So during that 12 months or whatever you've got left of that OPT, because some of you may have used some of your OPT before graduation and you only have 9 months of OPT left, that's great. When you're in that 9 months of post-completion OPT, you're in a STEM field, you can apply for a 2-year extension when it gets close to the end of that initial period of OPT. And so we'll explain STEM in just a few moments as well. But this is good news. If you have saved your CPT and used it carefully, you get 12 months of OPT after graduation, and then you get a 2-year extension that you can tap on to the end of that 12 months when it comes time for you to apply for that 2-year extension. Some of you may have used some of your OPT before graduation. That's fine. Maybe you have 9 or 6 months left of OPT for after graduation. That's great. During that time period, 6, 9 months of OPT, you can turn around and apply for the 2-year extension to help you get the experience you want here in the US. There we go. We explained that already. The employment authorization for optional practical training appears on a photo document called an employment authorization document. There is a fee involved, whether you're applying for post-completion, post-graduation, or pre-completion, pre-graduation OPT. The fee at this time is $470 and takes 3 months to process. You will need to pay a premium processing fee of $17.80 in order to ensure that you get the OPT approved within 30 business days. Now, if you're applying for pre-completion OPT, you will need to come see us 3 months before you plan to use it. And we will tell you that you have to pay for premium processing because of the problems we've had with OPT. If you're applying for post-completion OPT, you may be okay to go ahead and use the regular processing time and pay the regular processing fee. However, if you get close to the end of the semester and you're getting a little bit worried that the OPT hasn't arrived yet, or you're just coming to see us late in the process to apply for OPT, you can pay the premium processing fee at any time to help speed up the process. But plan ahead. That's the key thing with anything dealing with immigration. Plan ahead. The process for OPT, you start off with iBearcats Global. You will find an e-form there for the 12-month and the 24-month STEM request. You need to fill in the e-form, attach your documents, click submit, and at this point, your academic advisor, if you are graduating, will get an email verifying that you're graduating. Or if you're using this for pre-completion OPT for a co-op semester, your co-op advisor will need to get the email to verify that you really truly need this practical training. Once we get it, it takes us 5 business days. We will then issue an I-20 and then instructions on how to apply for the OPT through the Immigration Services US CIS portal. And there's a video here a little bit more about OPT if you're interested. Do not start the OPT application in the portal until you have the I-20 from us. And also make sure that you submit the I-20 into the portal within a certain time frame. And so if you are thinking about applying for OPT, I'm going to highlight a workshop that you should attend before you start the OPT process. But this is just an additional warning to make sure you are aware that there are some very specific time frames that you have to fulfill and certain steps you must follow in a certain process before you apply for OPT. All goes well, you'll get an OPT card that looks a little bit like this. Put your photo on there, the start and the end date of your practical training experience, and then you can go off and find jobs in your field of study, making sure that your mailing address is secure so the card arrives on time and the employment is in your field of study and appropriate for your degree level. For example, if you've got a bachelor's or a master's in engineering, you're not flipping burgers at McDonald's, but maybe you're working at McDonald's corporate headquarters, engineering and designing new buildings or systems for AVAC or something along those lines. The employment must be at least 20 hours per week and can be volunteer or paid. And the reason why that part's important is that during the 12-month period, you are not permitted to accumulate more than 90 days of unemployment. You can work for temp agencies or consulting firms. You can even start up your own company. That works as well. But any changes that happen during the OPT period, you gotta let us know within 10 days of the change happening through iBearcats Global. Finally, well, not quite finally, but moving on to STEM for a few slides here. STEM OPT, again, is for a 2-year extension for those of you who are in a STEM field, which if you're here from CEAS, you are in a STEM field, you need to make sure that you have some form of post-completion OPT already approved, whether it's for 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. And about 3 months before that period expires, you will need to make sure you're with an employer that's in the E-Verify system, which is optional. But again, go to InterStride. They'll tell you which employers are out there hiring students on STEM OPT. And then you can go ahead and start the process in iBearcats Global. Let me go here. In iBearcats Global to begin that STEM application process. And so, again, the employment must be in your field of study appropriate to degree level. The employment must be paid during the STEM extension period. So make sure you are working at least 20 hours per week, and it is a paid position. Employment through temp agencies and consulting firms may be prohibited, so be very careful with that. Basically, what we're saying here is the Immigration Service wants you to be working for a company that's paying you and supervising you. If you're working for a temp firm and they're paying you but sending you to another employer who's supervising you, that's not going to work for STEM. Also, you need to keep in mind that unfortunately, working for a startup or a company that you could do during the initial 12 months of OPT no longer will apply during the STEM extension. You can't be self-employed. You have to be working for someone who is going to be supervising you. However, the number of days you can be unemployed does increase to 150 days. And so if you're having a rough time keeping a job or you're changing jobs periodically, just keep in mind that 150 days of unemployment is not permitted during the STEM period, but it's a lot better than just the 90 days you had under the initial 12 months. Okay, now we're almost getting to the final part of the part one before we move on to Christy here. Some of you may hear something about gap, and that is because if you are interested in long-term employment in the US and pursuing an H-1B, there are a limited number of H-1Bs are issued per year. They are typically applied for during April 1st of a given year, and they will start on October 1st in that same year. So if your employer is going to support you, you win the lottery or whatever is going on at that particular time, and you submit the application for an H-1B, you are potentially eligible for a gap approval. What is this? Well, let's say your OPT is going to expire after April 1, on or after April 1, and you have a pending or approved H-1B that's going to start October 1. Well, there's a gap there. If you have a gap like this for any given year, let us know. We will issue an I-20. There is no fee involved. That will extend your OPT during that gap period between April and October 1. So keep that in mind. Look this up later on in the next year or two if you are going into OPT here soon, to make sure this is still something you can utilize, and contact us if you have any further questions. You can apply for this through iBearcats Global. We will request some additional documentation from you if you're on the STEM extension, and then we will go ahead and issue the I-20. This only applies if you're working for a corporate company. If you're working for higher education and in a non-government organization or a non-for-profit, you typically do not need a gap I-20 because you're going to be eligible to start your H-1B throughout the year and not between April 1st and October 1. All right, some final thoughts about OPT. If you have further questions or you are at the process where you are going to want to start applying for OPT, we do have a weekly OPT workshop in the GEL, the Global Engagement Lounge. This is on the 6th floor of Edwards Center 1, every Wednesday, 3 o'clock until April 30th. And you'll get step-by-step assistance from Ms. Rebecca Jewell on how to apply for OPT and to get some of your questions answered, like when do you start? How much is this going to cost? What should I put here on this form? And she'll work with you on those particular steps. In a summary, use the Bearcat Promise Studio with your job search. Plan your co-op EEP semesters very, very carefully. Give yourself plenty of time to apply for any of these options. The longer you wait, the fewer options you have. And always ask questions from your co-op advisor and from our office. Do not rely on friends, Reddit, or other websites. I cannot tell you the number of times we have students who have come in and have messed up their futures because they read something and misunderstood it on Reddit. One of their friends didn't have the accurate information. There are going to be changes to OPT and CPT likely over the next few years. And so we will do our best to keep you up to date with what those changes potentially happen, if they do happen at all. And so if you have any questions, let your co-op advisor know, let your academic advisor know, let us know so we can assist you with that. This QR code will take you to our site, which talks about OPT and CPT. So if you have a dire need to know something at 2 o'clock in the morning about CPT, there's our website, which is always there with this information that I've just shared with you. And then finally, this is our contact information regarding where we're located here on campus and our phone number and email. All right, with that, I'm going to stop sharing. Christy, you are up next with your part of the presentation.
All right, thank you so much. So give me just a second to get my slides up and shared. Let me put it over there. All right, so I think you can see that. So James did a great job covering a lot of what I typically cover in the
Oh,
first part of my
my apologies.
session. No, no, it's good. It's good. And because of time, I'm not going to go into that. So, with the legal aspects of OPT, CPT, just make sure you reference what James had talked about, reference the recording, and of course, reach out to UCI for that. So I do want to focus more on the co-op aspect of it and your search as an international student. So just to reiterate some of the things that, I think James already talked about this too, but I really want to emphasize that because sometimes as international students, you might feel a little lost about like, well, what do I do? Do I look for a co-op here or how do I manage that? So again, just to reiterate what your options are. So you can do all 5 of your co-ops in the US, just use up all your CPT, and then your OPT is gone, and then you just go back to your country at the end. So you're not using OPT at all, you're just going to go back. And some students, that is their plan. For other students, you want to try to work after you graduate, and so you might try a different approach. So you could do 3 co-ops in the US and 2 abroad somewhere else. That way you're still preserving your OPT so that you can use all of it post-graduation. Now, I think James mentioned there's been this is the safest way. So this is right now because James has mentioned with things going on, the last option here, the mixed option with doing some CPT and then shifting over to using pre-completion OPT, which would enable you to do 3+ co-ops here in the US without necessarily draining all of your post-completion OPT. However, with things going on right now, it's very, very, very slow, and some students have not been able to get their pre-completion OPT in time. So the safest route right now is that middle option, doing 3 here, 2 abroad, and then you can just relax and not worry about tapping into your OPT. So that's kind of the best option at this point. So how to find a co-op as an international student. So as I mentioned, at least 2 of your co-ops can be outside the US. So you can find a co-op back home. This is often what I kind of suggest to students, maybe for your first one, go back home. You have the most connections starting out back at home. And then that way you can build up your resume a little bit and then come back and be a lot more competitive in the job search compared to maybe others. So that way you can build up your experience and then you're also building up your networking and your connections back at home as well. So my advice is to start networking with family and friends now. Research and use job sites commonly used in your country. However, LinkedIn is widely used all over the world, so you should be able to still use LinkedIn. However, some cultures obviously vary in the way that they do kind of finding jobs. So it might be more word of mouth, or maybe you have to go in person and visit them. So just maybe if you're not sure how that works, maybe asking your family and people around you how that typically works so you can follow whatever is kind of the norm in your country. And so that's kind of what I suggest is maybe your first 1 or 2, but some students do it in the opposite way. But whatever you think is kind of going to work best for you, that's what you can do. So you can find a co-op at home, or you can also find a co-op in another country. So you're not stuck to just 2 options, either home or the US. You can go somewhere else. So you can totally go abroad somewhere else. So there's a few ways that you can do that. So you can go through the Worldwide Experience program. So this is pretty unstructured. It's just basically where you're looking for those jobs on your own, again, outside the US and your home country. Once you find a position, then you would just register that through the Worldwide Experience program and you would enroll in a specific section of the co-op course. And I'll say too, I'll talk about this more in detail in a few slides, and James already mentioned it. InterStride is a wonderful resource for finding those positions. So you might think like, well, where am I supposed to look if I want to go to like Europe or something? InterStride is going to have those positions there for you. So InterStride helps you for finding jobs here, in the US as an international student, but it also helps you and even domestic students to find co-op opportunities outside the US. So that will kind of be your main place to look. We also have the International Co-op Program. This is the structured program here at UC. It is 2 semesters. It is your 2 final semesters as well. So this is not one you can do anytime. It is co-op rotation 4 and 5. So that spring, summer rotation leading into senior year. That way you have like a really long period of time where you can go abroad and make the most of that experience. You need a GPA of minimum of 3.0. You have to take some language and other classes because it is a certificate program, so it's a little bit more involved. And we have programs available in German, Japanese, French, and Spanish. So basically, like you would submit, like apply, and then they review, make sure you meet the qualifications, and then they would work to match you with one of our partner employers. A lot of students like to do this. International students do it. Domestic students do it. Again, it's a really great experience if you're interested in going abroad, but you don't want to go home. This is a great way to do that. You can also do global research labs. This is a newer program. So this one you can do for 1 to 2 semesters. So you can do it just once, you can do it 2. GPA minimum is a 2.8. So this is where if you're interested in maybe doing some research, we have partners in various countries where we can help match you with a research lab to do work for them. So we have programs in Taiwan, Spain, France, and then they're working on Japan. And I'll say too, for any of these global research labs and for international co-op program, the contact is Erin Bove. So at the end, when we do questions, I'll put her email in the chat. If you're interested in any of these or you want to know, like, when do you start, all that, you can direct those questions to her. So she's the one who's kind of managing that. So kind of moving on to your tips for your US search. So I know like this is kind of the thing you're the most interested in. For most of you, don't want to go home, like you want to find a job here. So some tips. So first thing, check the post if it says anything about eligibility requirements. So some positions require US citizenship. And they need that for, maybe the regulations because of the type of work that they do. Maybe they need to utilize security clearance, which is a certain level of like secrecy that some government work requires. So if you're looking at a company, like maybe it's the government or it's a contractor that works for the government, some contractors only do government work. Some of them might do a mix of industry and government work. And so it's just really good to look at that posting to see, does it say US citizen only, must be eligible for security clearance, something like that, then that would be a position that you don't want to apply to. The position should always like include that information. So if you don't see it, it's not clear, go ahead and apply. Don't put the onus, the burden of that on yourself. Let them review your application and review if you're a good fit for that or not. So if you don't see it, just go ahead and apply. We talked about it a little bit already with global research labs, but you should definitely consider research. That's a really great option. We have quite a few students that work on campus at UC in research labs. You can look at all the research that is happening at UC through the UC research directory for a whole list. Does it have to be like, let's say you're a mechanical engineering major? Do you have to just work in a mechanical engineering lab? No, the answer is no. You can work in any engineering lab. We also have some engineering students who are working in medical labs, maybe a physics lab. So as long as you can make a case for why that's relevant and related to your major and to your overall goals, then that's something that we would typically approve. Your co-op advisor might also have major specific places to check as well. And then if you just want to see the list of engineering labs, you can go to the CEAS Research Labs link. We have many in the College of Engineering and lots of researchers. Sometimes a few, they might be really organized and on top of things, and they will put their positions in Handshake. But a lot of researchers, they're just really busy in their lab, they're doing their thing, they might have some graduate assistants helping them, and they don't really think about like, yes, I could also open this to undergraduate students. They're not really thinking about that. So you should be proactive in this process. So mostly it's a proactive outreach. So finding, the list of labs that you'd be interested in, finding whoever is the head researcher there, send them an email. I have an email template linked here as well. So I'll send out my portion of the slides after this. As long as you, did I put I skipped that. I'll put my email in the chat. So if you want my slides with all the links, just send me an email because I think we didn't do like a sign-in. So, but yeah, these positions are sometimes in Handshake, but you need to send an email. And so the email is just like elevator pitch. Hey, this is me. You know, I major. I'm looking for co-op X semester. I'm really interested in your lab. Do you have any opportunities where I could work in your lab? So those could be paid, ideally is paid, but sometimes they're unpaid. And that's one reason why some researchers don't post it, because they're like, oh, nobody will do it because it's not paid or it's not paid a lot. But if you're just like really looking for that experience and you really want to get a co-op to help bolster your experience and fulfill your requirements, you could consider that. Okay, so aside from research, lots of job search websites that can help you. So LinkedIn, great place to look for positions, connect with UC students, alumni, and recruiters. Maybe think about connecting with people that you have something in common with. So maybe you're from the same home country, from the same city. Maybe you're, this is someone who went to UC. So trying to find those links in common and then connecting with those people, that's going to help you. Using Career Shift. This is a service that UC pays for. This is like, let's say that you really want to reach out to someone who's in recruiting at Honda, but you don't know who they are. You can go to Career Shift, type in Honda, and it gives you the full list of like all the employees. So it's like a lot, but it goes by like ranking. So from top to bottom. So you can scroll through till you find recruiter or hiring manager, and then it'll give you the name of that person. And it also gives you their email address, like their actual email address. So this also works if you have a person's name, but you don't know how to reach them. You can put their name in and it actually gives you their direct email. So this is actually a better way than using LinkedIn just to message people, because some people use LinkedIn all the time and some people don't. So getting their email is probably the best way of being seen. Interstride, so we've talked a lot about that already. This is like the big, awesome place for international students to look for jobs, both like here in the US and abroad. So Interstride has like all those positions here in the US that international students would be eligible for. I also tell students, like, use Interstride all the time, but don't use it only. Like, you want to look at all the other things because there's so many companies that they could hire an international student, but they haven't before, or maybe they just don't understand how that works. And so just like with the researchers, you need to be a little bit proactive and take the first step towards them. So definitely still look in all the other places. On Handshake, you can also use like filters for filtering for CPT, OPT, that kind of thing. But again, a lot of employers don't know what that means. So I wouldn't rely heavily on that. Like, put it on, see what pops up, take it off. And then again, looking for in the job description itself, does it say no international students? Does it say US citizen only? If it doesn't, apply anyway. All right, and then sponsorship questions. So that is a common thing that comes up. So in the past, my response to this question, my advice to students is just to answer based on your real circumstances. But we've had companies that don't like that very much. So they want to know, like, both realistically and hypothetically, do you need sponsorship at some point now or in the future? And they want you to say no. However, the real answer is, the reality is that you don't need sponsorship right now because you're a student and you have permission to work through your F1, through the CPT process, right? CPT and OPT gives you permission to work. So the company has to do nothing for you to help you to work. So the answer is no. But sometimes they want you to say yes because they think at some point you will need H-1B, right? So they're kind of thinking more like, do you need H-1B in the future? That's kind of what that question is for. So, sometimes they separate that question. Do you need sponsorship now? Then you can say no. Do you need sponsorship in the future? And then you would have to say yes. So just kind of like use your judgment on that, but don't like try to hide it or minimize it or answer wrongly, because they will find out eventually, and then that will like look badly on you. We've had students who have had their offers rescinded, which means taken back, and even companies who have been upset with UC for situations like this happening. So you just want to make sure that you're really focusing on those companies that really want to work with you and they want to have you there. So yeah, there's lots of information on Interstride about how to answer that question. So definitely check that out. And then just kind of a few final closing points. You want to manage your expectations. So a lot of employers, especially now, unfortunately, don't want to hire non-citizens for full-time employment because the rules are all over the place and it changes all the time. And they are just like trying to play it safe. Like, I don't know what's going on. Let's just pause hiring international students. Let's pause hiring H-1B. So we're just going to like pause it. So unfortunately, the opportunities are becoming more limited. So just keep that in mind as that's a real thing. So you're coming up against that in your search. As far as like post-graduation plans, do your best. If H-1B is your goal, go for it. Go and do it. Things could change by the time you get to that point. But just know that like not everybody can do that realistically. So for some students, likely your time in the US will be limited to maybe some co-ops, maybe your OPT, and then you might end up having to return home. So if that is not your goal, you don't want to ignore that possibility. You want to also have that as like, okay, this is my plan B, my last resort. You don't want to forget about it though. You want to make sure you're keeping your networking really active throughout your time here back at home so that you are able to activate those networks if you do end up going home and then you need to find a job. You don't want to sit for a year plus not being able to find a job. You want to make sure you're staying connected back at home as well. Being prepared, so as you're engaging with employers, having your elevator pitch prepared. So your name, major, professional interest, 3 relevant skills, and what are you seeking? So an interview, next steps, that kind of thing. And then like an elevator pitch, you need a sponsorship pitch. It's very important to have this like memorized, practice, rehearsed, prepared, smooth, because this is how you are explaining in a short, succinct way that they don't need to do anything for you. They can just hire you on the spot. So, something like, I don't require any sponsorship on your end. My student status makes me eligible to work just like any domestic student. I can even, if you're an engineering student, I can even work 1 to 3 years after graduation full-time without sponsorship. So that's a way, very succinct, like you don't need to do anything for me. You can have me for a pretty long time without anything. So have that ready to go, prepared. Be confident. So sometimes students are like, oh, I'm an international student. I really want to like hide that or put that to the side or make sure they don't find out. But you should be confident as an international student because you have so many amazing qualities that other students don't necessarily have. So what are things that make you unique as an international student, as someone who wanted to come here to a totally different place, far away from your family, from your community, where you have less support, where maybe you had to learn a new language or a new dialect of the language. So what makes you capable of navigating that? So maybe you're curious, you have intercultural competence, so you're aware of other cultures, you're resilient, you're resourceful, and so many more. So I always suggest for students, like, take some time to really think about that question, like, what made me want to study here? And what makes me like successful? And you might still be like in the middle of it, like, I don't know if I'm successful or not. It's like a day-to-day survival thing, but you're still here. So what is helping you get through the day? What are those qualities and characteristics, and really bring that out when you're talking to employers. Last, I want to leave us with your support team. So your academic advisor, your co-op advisor, UC International, people like James, they're really helpful and give you lots of information that you need on the legal aspect. And then the Bearcat Promise Studio as well, especially as an international student. We do have an international career coach, which is Becca Hale. So she can definitely help you specifically. But yes, that's the brief rundown. We've got about 2 minutes for questions. If you don't mind at all, please like leave some feedback for us. So as you're thinking about your questions, please put that, let me just put that in the chat right now. And then, yeah, we'll go ahead and take any questions that might have come up.
Good job, Christy. Boy, that
Yeah.
crammed all that in. That's great.
Yes.
All right. Are there any questions you may